Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to create an empowered life from chronic pain? Join us. Let's see how it is. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas E. Smith. Whoa, we got a close up there for a second. I was like,
we can zoom right in on you. Like what?
whoa,
Wow.
hey, front and center all of a sudden. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, go and do that now. Hit the alert button so you know when we go live every single dang time. And then join us on Facebook, a tribe of giants, because that's where we have a giant group of people that support each other, love each other, and help us through all the stuff that comes up in life. Yeah. And then we have SG group. But
Often quite a
if
bit, right?
yeah, if you want to know, like dive deeper and spend some more one-on-one time and some small group coaching or personal coaching, definitely check out our SG groups because that's a great place as well.
It's
Um,
perfect.
that's
Yeah.
perfect. Nick, will you
Let's
introduce our guest?
let's hold for a long, awkward
Yeah,
pause.
let's do it.
Damn, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we
Perfect.
go.
That
Oh,
should
we
be a
got an
thing.
awesome
The
guest.
long awkward pause right before
Yeah.
we start.
Yeah. Every time allow people to come
Good
in.
morning.
Well, that was awkward.
Yeah.
No, we got an awesome guest, and we're gonna dive into her story. This is Serita Valmond. Is that correct on the last name?
Hey, you got it right. You're close
All
enough.
right. Close enough. She's a certified coach, chronic pain coach. She empowers people battling with chronic pain to get control of their lives and bodies naturally. And her passion for helping chronic pain patients developed after her own experiences with the same pain when she had a serious car accident. And so she supports people who are at the end of their rope in the fight against chronic pain, and she helps them take back their lives with holistic nutrition, gentle movement, and mindset coaching. She practices what she preaches. So she just wants you to know that you're already a chronic pain warrior. So that's a good thing to know coming into this. But you need someone in your corner to help you get back to real living. You need a coach who will teach you and support you, not only in your physical health goals, but with mental and spiritual growth too. You need someone who has lived with chronic pain firsthand and is committed to the lifelong journey of prioritizing her health. She sees your struggle and is holding space for you, and we're grateful to have you in our show. So welcome to the show.
That's
No,
beautiful.
thank you. I appreciate it as well too. It's definitely been a journey. I always say like I'm on the. I don't say 360 because I don't want to be in the same spot. So I definitely say 180
Yeah,
as
Yeah.
that part
that's
of
good.
it. But yeah,
Yeah,
so thank you so much.
you're welcome. And our goal with this is really explore your journey. So we demonstrate kind of the giant's journey in all the different ways. There's so many ways for people to become giants in the world. I was talking to a gentleman out of Nigeria yesterday that is looking at ways to do that from a space of survival over there, and that's a totally different area. But there's a way to do it no matter where you are in the world, and that's what we want to highlight in your story. And so we always go back in time to either childhood, what it was like growing up, or to the event that woke you up. And so wherever you feel like starting, um, what was kind of your launch into what you're doing today?
Very good question. Well, I came out of corporate America, and I even take one more step back. So I'm a first generation American. So my
Yeah.
parents immigrated here, and so I'm trying to even think back to that too. I'm a miracle child. I can say that part. My parents were actually told that they couldn't have children. And so I was born into a 25-year marriage, already. So
Wow.
my
Yeah.
mom, after they had immigrated and moved here, they were in Minnesota for 10 years, came to Wisconsin. And the funny story about that is that my mom was a retired nurse. And so she was at work complaining about the flu. And they're like, well, you need to go home. Like like you're working with people. You shouldn't probably be here. But then one of her coworkers was like, hey, I'm going to give you a pregnancy test, just for shits and giggles, just to have you go ahead and take it. And so after the sixth one, she finally, kind of took in that she actually was pregnant and 42 years
Holy
old
cow.
at the time and thinking like, what the heck is going on here? So
Could you imagine? You think you start with the flu and you come out with a baby.
Actually, like almost close to 6 months, so like finding out when you're 6 months pregnant that you're about to have like this life-changing situation occur is, like what? And then on top of that too, she calls my dad and tells him with the doctor, and he thought this is before, being pranked was, the thing to do. My dad thought he was getting pranked. So he hung up the phone because he's like, there's no way that this is happening. So she actually had to take him into the doctor's appointment with her, sonogram and everything to actually show that this is what's going on. So just to kind of put a little
background. She calls him up. Hey, is your refrigerator running? You better go catch it.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, not like that.
Yeah, so that kind of
that's crazy.
Just to set the stage there. And I'm also an only child too. So they're like, okay, we're one and done. Like if this is it, so there's that part. So then we fast forward now to where I'm in corporate America, working a lot, as far as for, doing things, just trying to stay on top of things, extremely stressed out, was going through the end of my marriage, end of a close to 10-year marriage with 3 children. And I had a wake-up call for myself because I noticed that my body was kind of telling me different things. And I had actually been diagnosed with chronic migraines back when I was 12. And so mine were always stress-induced. And so I noticed when I was going through, working a lot in corporate America, dealing with a marriage that was beginning to end and things like that, I was starting to have severe migraines and everything all over again. And so I started to make some changes as far as where I recognized that my body was saying, hey, you need to start paying attention to different things. Let's start making some changes. So I started to do so. And slowly, things started to dissipate and things were okay. Then fast forward to July 4th of 2016. And on that day, I was with an ex and we were, driving, and I was having a greedy day because it was one of my cheat days because I worked out 6 days a week, and I was like, hey, it's cheat day. Let's go grab some ice cream, and then we can go back to the house. Well, we did not make it. We actually were at a stoplight in an area where the speed limit was 25, and we got rear-ended by a drunk driver that was going at least 60.
Holy cow.
And so from there, next day, I thought I was okay, called into work and said, hey, I'm going to be late. Got to go pick up the rental car and everything. We should be fine. And my supervisor's like, are you sure? Because based off what you just told me, that sounds like it's kind of severe. You might want to go and get checked out. I'm like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm good. No worries. So get the rental, get to work. And before I can completely sit down, my supervisor comes up to me and she says, hey, I need you to go to the ER. You are shaking and you are turning red. I didn't realize I was going into shock at work. So from there,
thank goodness they noticed, right?
Right. Because I didn't, the thing is I finally because granted, I slept in everything the night. So I thought, I slept in everything the night before, but in reality, my body was just so high on adrenaline that I never really was able to finally come down. So when I finally sat down, that's when my body was like, whoa. And then, basically just shook me from there. And so being the stubborn person that I am, I drove myself to urgent care, got checked out. They gave me 3 prescriptions and I said, hey, let's go back out here to the lobby and talk to the person that brought you here and let them know what's going on. And I started to laugh a little bit because I was like, yeah, no, I'm the one that drove myself. And they're like, you shouldn't be driving. Like, you need to have someone come and get you. And I'm like, well, I don't have anyone that can come and get me. But I made a promise to them that as soon as I got home, I will call you guys right away, let you know that I made it and that I'm okay. So I did that, got home, called my doctor, which my doctor's been my doctor for over 20 years. And I said, hey, I was in an accident. Can I get in Monday morning to see you? And he's like, yeah, be my first patient, 8 a.m. Monday morning, see you then. Well, I barely made it to the doctor's appointment. I was in so much pain that I've never felt before in my life. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking these prescriptions, exactly at the time that they're telling me to and everything. And nothing was helping me. So when I got in to see him, he looked at me and he's like, what is going on? Like, I've never seen you like this before. And I've been in car accidents before, but nothing as severe as this one. And so he said, okay, let me go ahead and I want you to see a specialist. And once he said that, that actually began what I call the year of specialists. where I was basically seeing every single person you could think of under the
Wow.
sun to try to see what's going on and getting tested.
Man, I'm at a loss of words almost because I've never had any experience like that where it's that severe and that impactful. Ryan posted the book, The Body Keeps the Score by
Yes.
Bessel van der Kolk, right?
Yes.
Peter Levine, I think, has another book called Waking the Tiger, which talks about trauma in the body. And when trauma hits the body, it hits as a whole body experience, not just the mind. And I'm sure you'll bring that up as we talk here. But I mean, you think about, you have an accident, everything's fine, you go back to normal. That's the power of the body, is that it has the ability to let you do that. But there's a point where that starts wearing off and the effects come in. I can only imagine going through that year of specialists and not having answers, right? Because it doesn't sound like they could even solve it. They're just like, we don't even know what's going on.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. And I was even going to say too, when we're talking about books as well, Dr. Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural is another one too, where, he's also discussing the same, similar. So it's funny because I've read all those books that you're, talking about too, just as part of my research and everything. But it was just, it was a shock to me because even, for example, my middle child, I had natural childbirth. And within 15 minutes, I was walking around like nothing happened. And I was getting yelled at by the staff because they're like, you just had a baby. Like, you need to go lay down and rest. And I'm like, nah, like I was sitting for too long, pushing. I need to like walk around or whatever. Like, okay, and to go from that to now, I could feel everyone's energy. Like if I felt you staring at me for too long, or if you were like too close to me, my body would just like, it would seize up. And I just would feel like throughout my whole entire body. And they could not, explain anything to me. And with me going to see the different specialists and everything, every time I came out, I was coming out with an additional prescription.
Holy cow. Yeah. Yeah. And so you were feeling this as a full body experience. So there was a lot of mental to that too, but you're feeling it as pain. And so still no answers. How did that impact you mentally?
Mentally, it took me down. Like I was really dealing with a lot of anxiety. I fell into a deep depression as well too. And part of that actually came through too, because I was, on disability now. I also was having to fight for my disability because the thing is that, they couldn't really say initially where the pain was coming from. And so the thing is that for me, it was really concentrated, which I ended up discovering that it was from my right shoulder going down into my right hand and into my, my right arm into my hand, and I'm right-handed. And then after that, it started to go into my upper neck and back and then into my joints. So they're like, okay, we don't know why it's spreading, like this. Like it started in one spot and it just started to go completely through the rest of my body. And so they felt that each time I was seeing the different specialists, so like, okay, well, here's this for this, here's this for that. And eventually I did actually end up seeing a orthopedic surgeon, which that one was an interesting experience because he said to me, let's go ahead and run some more tests. And I literally just started laughing because I was like, that's all that you guys have been doing anyway. So I said, if you find out something, great. If you don't, whatever. It's like, no harm, no foul, because I'm like, this is what's been going on. And he did actually come back and said that they saw that I had bone chip spurs going into my nerve in my right shoulder.
Oh, wow.
And that's where the pain and everything was coming from. But by that point, I just felt so mentally defeated that I just was like, okay, if this is what it is, it's, it's what it is. And so I did end up contacting my mother because I'm in Wisconsin. My parents live in Florida. And my mom actually was a retired orthopedic nurse. So she was the perfect person for me to say, hey, should I really actually do this or not? And she said to me, yes, you should. And don't worry about it. I'll come up and take care of you. You'll be fine. Just go ahead and schedule it out. So I still had to wait another 4 additional months to get in to actually have the surgery. So now, looking at it, I was at a point where on the pain scale, goes from 1 to 10. I was on a 9 consistently, 8 or 9.
Yeah. I want to ask you, so in our journeys, we teach 12 journeys. And one of those is unconsciousness, awareness, grief, and then gratitude, right? Acceptance and gratitude. You go through this model here. But I want to hit on something that you brought up there, the feeling defeated. And I want to take us off course a little bit and go down a rabbit hole with this, because I want to bring up the difference and the distinction between defeat and surrender.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So like feeling defeated is like something else had an impact on me that maybe made me feel hopeless, powerless. at a loss, right? Versus surrender is you handing that over.
Yep.
Can you speak to that? Does that bring something up for you?
Absolutely, because I was actually going to say that was part of my journey towards me, coming, don't want to say full circles. Like I said, we don't want to go back there, but coming, the 180 is that I did have to actually surrender. Like I said before, I felt it defeated, and part of it also came into play too as part of my story, which we'll kind of get into that in 2 seconds, as well. But the surrender part was very difficult for me because I felt that surrender also was equaling powerlessness, which I had to actually turn that, switch in my mind and say, well, no, that's not. You're actually surrendering to a higher power that's showing you that once you go ahead and take your hands off of it, it's going to be able to go ahead and be okay and move forward. And once I've got that, in my mind that, okay, you need to just go ahead and let it go. That's when everything started, it was like a switch, just like house, and everything just started to go in the right direction.
Let's hang on this for a minute, because it's that defeating moment that often will just take us down and down and down and down, and it feels compressed and the world's closing in. There's no options. You can't really see any options. And with chronic pain, I can imagine that constant feeling of pain would have you in a constant state of fight or flight, just depression and sadness and anxiety about, is this my future? We taught a course to 300 teachers down in Southern Utah. And one of the things that came up was the grief of the ideal life, the life that should have been, right? And so there's that occurs in people where there's just no room for hope in that defeat. And I love that you brought up surrender as a rendering over to a higher power. That could be a God, that could be yourself, a higher version of yourself. But in surrender, the word means to render over to another.
Yep.
And so to do that, you've got to turn it over to another, and bringing up the idea that there's this version in your mind that says, well, that's powerlessness. That's weakness. I can't do that. But the moment you did, things started falling in line. Can you speak to that a little bit?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Once I went ahead and just, decided, and like you said, I literally went and I'm a big, I'm a nerd. I'm not gonna lie to you about it. So I went and pulled out the dictionary. I started pulling out okay, what do these words even mean? Why am I, going through these different things? Why am I feeling this way? And when, like you said, exactly, you hit it right in the head when it comes to surrender. I'm like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to, because, so often you hear people using words incorrectly until you actually go and look up the definition of them. And you're like, okay, you're using that wrong, but that's another story. But when you start to look at that and see, hey, this definition, I like this. This is the actual definition. This is what I want to do. This is what I can see, myself being able to go ahead and do.
I think of Princess Bride, right? I do not think that word means what you think it means.
Exactly. So that's when when I saw that, I'm like, yes, that's it. That's what I want to do. This is what it needs to be in order for me to go. And I really felt, because of me being a science experiment, it's I want to go ahead and take it over. I'm not going to go ahead and just, continue on this path, because clearly everything that they're telling me is not working. It's actually making things worse. So I'm at this point, I was what's the worst thing that can happen that I could actually feel better? Let me go ahead and just, take it over, because really, in all honesty, I'm the one that knows my body. All the doctors and specialists, they don't know what your body is like. And so that was the other thing I had to remember too, that yes, 9 times out of 10, they've never experienced what you experienced. They just only, basically studied the science behind it, but they've never actually had the physical feeling of what you're going through, or even the mental for that matter as well too. So that's why it's so important to really talk to people that are actually going through it as well, or have gone through it. So then that way you have that support system as well too, to be able to go ahead and move forward. And that's something I had to really build on my own.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just thinking of okay, so you have all these things happening in your life, you've got 3 kids, your marriage is ending, there's all this stuff, and then the accident happens. And we skipped over okay, well, what happened in between all of that stuff? So there's a year, and you have this corporate job, right? And you're just go. And then did you keep your job? Did the marriage stay together? All these things, there's tons of stuff in between that was happening in your life too, juggling it all. Maybe chaos, a little bit of, and then you have to grieve all of those other things on top of like what could have been and dealing with all of the physical pain, and you've probably got a lot of emotional pain as well. Can you speak on those things?
Yeah, so that's going to take me back into my story. So I definitely can go ahead and do that. So actually, my marriage did actually end the year prior to my accident. So when I was in the car accident, I was actually with an ex-boyfriend at the time that I was, with. And when that basically all occurred, I'll take you to the point of when I had to have the surgery. So when I had that surgery, as I mentioned, my mom said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take care of you. Don't worry about it. Well, I ended up finding out that my mother actually was getting sick herself. And so in between waiting for the surgery, I actually was going back and forth between here in Florida, going to doctor's appointments and things with her and basically trying to help take care of her. When it came to my job, I still was on long-term disability now at this point. And I had to go to doctor's appointments to basically get, the check mark saying, yes, she's still, in the same state that she's in. And then we can go ahead and continue basically paying you. Eventually, though, I did actually end up losing my job because it got to a point where even after, after everything, I still was basically not deemed able to come back to work. But we'll get to that part too. So going a step back now, like I mentioned, taking care of my mom and everything, about roughly the end of February, I normally was going to like the beginning of the month. I was always going to visit, my mom and taking her to her doctor's appointments. And when the last time I saw her, she had said to me in February, hey, go ahead and just come towards the end of the month because your surgery's in April. That way you don't have to worry about coming in the beginning. I'm doing good. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. So I'm like, all right, fine. And of course, I would talk to my mom every day, like clockwork, 10 a.m. That was our thing. And so then after that, my parents' wedding anniversary was March 4th of that year. Didn't get a chance to call that day, but the next day my dad calls me and I answer the phone. I'm like, I start talking right away because that's what I do. So I'm like, oh, Dad, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance. And I stopped talking. And the reason why I stopped talking is because I heard an ambulance in the background.
Oh.
My dad was like, hey, and I said, what's going on? He's like, well, your mom was a little unresponsive. And so we're taking her to the hospital. And I said, well, first of all, no one's a little unresponsive, Dad. So I said, what are you talking about? I said, what is going on? And I could hear her talking in the background. And so I thought that, okay, because I can hear her talking, that was actually a good sign for me. Because at least I know that now she's responsive because she's actually talking. And so hung up the phone from him. And my cousin calls me right away because she was actually there visiting. And she said, hey, I'm the one that called. Your dad wasn't going to call. I don't know what's going on. But she's like, your mom was like barely talking, speaking or anything. And I wanted her to get some assistance. So I said, thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. And then I ended up calling my dad back. I said, please let me know as soon as you guys get there to let me know how things are going with her. Well, he didn't call me until the next day, which of course was frustrating. But nonetheless, when he called me back, he said, well, your mom's in a medically induced coma. And we're still not sure exactly what's going on. So this was all within like a matter of less than 24 hours that this was going on. And on top of that, I still had a doctor's appointment for the next week in order to get my disability approved again. So I'm calling the doctor's office Monday morning, first thing, like, hey, can I get an appointment today, tomorrow, something? Because I said, I need to get down to Florida to see what's going on with my mom. And so they said, unfortunately, we don't have any openings. You still have to keep your appointment for Thursday. Which I'm like, okay, that's a long time, when your mom is in the hospital, to try to figure out, what's going on. But I did eventually get to speak to someone, which they were saying to me that she actually was starting to have multiple organ failure. And they're not quite sure, why exactly was happening. And so finally, I was able to get my doctor's appointment to Thursday, flew out first thing Friday morning, got there, was able to actually sit down and talk with doctors and everything. And apparently my mother was fighting pneumonia and wasn't telling me. And so she was actually going to get like antibiotic treatments and things like that, but nothing was working. She was basically like on her fifth antibiotic and it still was not, affecting anything. And so they said, this is why things are happening the way they are. I walk in the room, she has tubes and everything in, all these things going on. She can't talk. She can, she can blink and things like that. And so I was holding her hand and talking with her.
Holy cow.
And they basically told me that she, was going to, like, towards the tail end, and said, oh no, she's doing okay. She's going, because I basically slept there for 3 days straight. Like, I was not leaving out of there. The nurses and everything knew me at this point. They knew how much pain and everything that I was in. They're trying to like prop me up and stuff and try to like make me as comfortable as possible, because they knew I wasn't going to leave. And I told them, I said, until things actually change for her condition, I'm not leaving.
So you're in your pain, right? You're still in your pain. You're still navigating that. And you're sitting there being with your mom in that pain, being with her in her pain. Like, that's just, I just want to highlight that. That's it. I just want to bring that out and just highlight
ball
it.
of pain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, and I hope you can hang on to your thought thread there so that we can go back to it. But there's it seems like when things go south, like this, that more things come into it, and it's just like all this stuff at once just hits you, and it's one thing after another, and that could also feel defeating. And I think there's another opportunity to surrender, right? Like, this one more opportunity to surrender, because that's the way out. Surrender is almost that acceptance of it is what it is. And it gives you that peace of mind that you can start creating your way out of it. Do you remember where you left off? I'll let you continue there. And,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm glad that you said for me to hold that thought too, because normally I wouldn't. So thank you for the prompt.
Yeah.
But so then, I was there. They finally said, okay, things look like they're stabilizing. She's actually doing really good today. Go home, lay down, get a good night's sleep, come back. And when you come back in, we can talk about, her being discharged and what things are going to look like going forward. So I'm like, great. Like, that's awesome. Like, I will definitely go home, take a shower, go ahead and lay down. So I go to my parents' house, do that. And about 7:17 in the morning, because I remember it, I get a phone call. And they're like, you need to come to the hospital as soon as possible. We don't know what happened, but everything has taken a turn for the worse, and we don't think she's going to make it today. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? When I left last night, you guys said that everything was fine and we're going to be talking about discharge, not you need to hurry up and get in here because we don't know what's going on. So I went and woke my dad up, said, hey, we got to go. We got up, we drove to the hospital. And I started talking to them. I said, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, once again, this is what I was told. And they said, well, we're looking at everything and all of her numbers and things are starting to go down. They're taking the tank. And I said, okay, I need to, and this was now Monday. So I said, okay, I'm like, well, I need to start making phone calls. I'm like, I got to go ahead and call my ex-husband, because I need him to pull the kids out of school, because I need them to be able to go ahead and talk to her, because if this is the last time they're going to get a chance to talk to her, I need to be able to go ahead and make that happen. So thank goodness for technology and everything that, he was able to go ahead and do so. And my oldest son at the time was 17, almost 18. So I was able to go ahead and put him on FaceTime. So he's able to go ahead and actually see her and everything. And he was talking to her and just saying, I love you, please, continue to fight and everything. And I really said to him at this point, I'm like, we don't know, because they were like now basically signing her over into hospice. And so they're putting her in hospice, in the actual hospital, because they said we can't even move her out of this room, because we were already in ICU at this point. And so they're like, we can't move her. We're just going to go ahead and keep her here. But they said to me, I don't know if you're aware, but your mother has a DNR. I had no idea. So I said, what do you mean she has a DNR? They're like, yes, we basically, if anything, happens from this point, we cannot resuscitate her or anything, which that was like a blow to me, that I was just like, what? Like, we never discussed anything like this, which I know I'm actually glad that she did do it that way, because she made that decision on her own. It wasn't something I had influenced or anything like that. But they said to me, at this point now, we actually have to go ahead and pull the different tubes and things out, because she had a feeding and breathing tube in. And they said we have to go ahead and pull those out. And once we do so, she can either be gone within a minute, or she could be gone within weeks. We don't, exactly know what it would be, but they're like, we have to go ahead and do this. So I said, okay, that's fine. Let me go ahead and finish, continue finishing up with the calls. So then I called my son back and put him back on, FaceTime again. So that way, after they did, the tube pulls and everything like that. And then I actually had called for my other children. And so my middle child, because they were, you know, in different parts of the house, I didn't want the younger kids who were still in elementary school at the time. So I didn't want them on FaceTime with her. So I did the regular speaker phone call. And my middle child, which their middle name is my mom's name. So they're very close with each other. And they started talking to my mom. And my mom's heart rate was like normal. When my child started talking to my mom, it jumped to 220. So I had to stop that conversation and be like, hey, you know, I get it. You're emotional and everything. I said, but we're not trying to take her out sooner than we need to at this point. Like, we need to kind of like calm her down, you know, so that way she can go ahead and just, you know, kind of rest a little bit. So I had to like interrupt the conversation, bring everything down and let them finish talking. And as they're talking, because like I mentioned, my mother was not able to speak at that time, but you could see like the tears, you know, coming down the side of her face. And so I'm like, you know, wiping the tears and everything from her. And then my youngest one talked to my mom, and same thing, you know, so the heart rate remained normal, but, you know, still watching the tears and everything. And so I got them off the phone and I just sat there and I just was really talking with my mom. And my dad was like at the end of the bed. I was actually laying on the bed with her. And I just talked to her and I actually said to her, and I actually gave her permission to die. I said to her, I said, Mom, you have fought as long as you could with everything. Because my mother, as long as I knew, my mom was always sick. So there's always something that was going on. Like my mother was a breast cancer survivor, you know, all these different things that had occurred. And I said, she was 79. And I said, you fought long enough. I'm like, you know, I love you. I will take care of, you know, everything that needs to be taken care of. You know, I had the conversation that if I ever see butterflies, you know, that's going to be our symbol that I know it's you, you know, so that way, you know, things would be okay. And she just held my hand and she just looked at me and she went. Oh. And when that happened, I screamed and I just screamed and screamed. And I remember just continuously screaming because I heard the machine flatline. And so from there, I was like, okay, the physical pain that I had, I didn't feel it at that point because my mind completely blocked it out because the grief took over. Where then I was at that point where I'm like, okay, now I need to go into daughter mode of I need to start planning things. And my dad, as I mentioned, my parents were married for 54 years the week before. My dad completely went into shock and like barely was talking. He was just there basically to sign the check for my mom's funeral. And that was pretty much it. And so I did everything down to talking at her funeral as well, too. I did, you know, a part, and I had some of my cousins and things were like, are you sure you want to talk at your mother's funeral? Like, you've had enough going on. They're like, we can look at you and see that you're in pain, you know, like you're physically in pain, like you're shaking right now. Like, are you sure you want to go ahead and do all this? I said, no, I made a promise. You know, I said that I was going to go ahead and do all this and see things through. That's what I'm going to do. And my god sister did come from New York to help me out, you know, as far as the mental support and everything too. But I did it. And then I came back up here, had my surgery. And the crazy part about that now is that, you know, I was expecting for her to, of course, you know, be with me. And I know that she wasn't. She's definitely always with me in spirit. But after I had the surgery, I actually lost the motor function in my right hand. So I had to actually relearn how to use my hand as far as, you know, like brushing my teeth, you know, combing my hair, all those different things. But when I discovered that part, I was on a lot of medications yet again. So taking a look at all this, by the time I had my surgery, I was on 7 to 8 medications on a daily basis. And so when I had the surgery, they had me on morphine, hydrocodone, and oxycodone. All of these at the same time. So I had took the medication, and to go a step back, my mother was cremated. So I had one of her small urn here. My dad has the other one at his house. And so I started to hallucinate from the different drugs that I was on, where I was actually like asleep for the day. And I had a dream that my mother was in my kitchen washing my dishes. And the crazy part about that is that my mom would say to me, number one, don't get addicted to any of these medications that they're putting you on, because if you get on all these different things, that's the one thing that's unfortunately going to happen. So she's like, don't do that. Also, too, the funny thing, when I was growing up, my mom would always be like, do not leave dirty dishes in the sink because you never know when you're going to be able to wash dishes. And so the two parts that I got from that, from her, washing the dishes, was number one, okay, Mom, I get it. Joke's on me. Yes, I shouldn't be, washing. I should have made sure I could have took care of them. But then also, too, I got the part of get off these drugs. Like, these are not going to be the thing, for you, that they're not going to help you. And so after I had that whole entire hallucination, I woke up, jumped out of my bed, and my house is a tri-level, so I can actually see down into my kitchen. So I ran to go into my kitchen because it felt so real that she was actually there. And then I looked and saw her urn on my mantle. And that's when I broke down. And I was like, I cannot do this. That was the first time that I surrendered, was at that point where I was like, you know what? No, we need to find another way as far as for this particular, getting off of these particular medications, because it's not doing what it's supposed to for you. And that was a sign from my mom, really just saying, hey, this is not the route for you.
I want to unpack some of this. Yes. So before we move on into the shifts and the changes and the growth, in the second half of this, it's amazing how a promise can carry us through. So if we don't have our own purpose, a promise to somebody else will often be powerful enough for us to step out and do something, that in other circumstances we wouldn't have energy to do. Right. I mean, you look at the impact of grief and mourning and loss, and then making a promise through that to somebody, and then holding that promise, keeping that promise, carries us through. But when that promise is fulfilled, then there's that void, right? Well, I did that, and there needs to be a new purpose, a new creation. And I think often people will fulfill a promise, and they're like, now what? They have no direction. They don't envision what they could create from that. And even from your space, it's almost like your vision evolved as you went through this process. It naturally flowed into what it needed to be, because you're experiencing all these things and these impacts, and there's really not room for you to really clarify and vision it out. You could have,
right?
But you worked through it, and that's survival mode. That's what we do when we're in survival mode. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to manage it. Who was it? We had somebody on the show the other day that it was on the park bench, Andrea Carbine. And she was talking about how she's under all this pressure. And it's like, the more pressure that was put on her, the stronger her bridge became. She became solid under that pressure. Mm-hmm. And we're designed for that. So to be able to move past that and handle all these things, we can handle it, but we also have an opportunity to create from it, to create vision from it, to grow from it, and to change our lives. And so sometimes there's this awakening moment. In the book, I put in there that he heard the giants laugh in the distance, right? Mm-hmm. And then he looked up, and that was his awakening, that there's something more. And in your case, there's a vision, a hallucination, mm-hmm. that your mom's in the kitchen washing dishes, mm-hmm. right? And it's a realization of, I do need to make a change. Here I'm going and surviving and in this automatic mode, but I've got to make a change. And Absolutely. So what I'm doing isn't going to work. But that vision was pivotal in your looking up, kind of like my story. It's like, that's that moment in life where you start to realize, I'm going to create this differently. Is that accurate?
It definitely is. And I even had a couple more moments as well, too, that actually came through that, there's actually two more. Because with me, like I said, I'm stubborn. It kind of takes a couple times for it to kind of knock on my head, for me to be like, okay,
I get it. Yeah.
You need to get it now. And it's stop being the stubborn. But that, I think, was definitely the first piece where I was like, okay, I don't want to be on all of these, but at the same time, what exactly do I need to do to not be on all of these as well, too? Yeah. And so, going through that and saying to myself, okay, what are the next steps? Well, after that, I ended up going to a couple more doctor's appointments. And when I was going to each one of those, every time I was going, it was basically additional detriment. Because like I said, losing the motor function to my right hand and being right-handed, having to relearn, all of those different pieces. And then, starting to get diagnoses now at this point, because now I'm starting to finally get some diagnoses. I'm starting to make some headway because I'm like, okay, at least I have something that, we can talk about here. And so I ended up being diagnosed with 5 things. So I ended up being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, myofascial pain syndrome, which is just a fancy way of saying chronic pain, degenerative disc disease in my neck, the chronic migraines, which I had, I had before, but they really wanted to put that stamp on it, and then also nerve damage. So that was why they were saying to me that I was on so many medications, was basically for the symptoms that I was having from all of those. And so after that ended up happening, I'm like still looking like, okay, well, what's going on? Well, they're saying, well, the possibility is you might have to have, more surgery. And I refused it because I said, at this point, you're telling me now that I'm at the 5% of people that this happens to. I don't want to find out I'm now the 1% of something else. It's like I'm done. Like I was at one, like I'm done with, trying to, have any more surgery.
Tired of being at the top of my class, right?
Exactly.
I'm not going to Vegas with you either.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the funny part is that I actually have good luck on that stuff. So
okay. Yeah. There you go.
And I've never been to Vegas, so when you put
Let's
it out
go.
there,
Giant retreat in Vegas, everyone. Maybe 2023.
Hey, it'll work. Let's make it happen. But going back though, with with that happening, I actually had finally had that moment where I was at another doctor's appointment, and they said to me, you know what, your son is going to be your caregiver. And I said, excuse me? They're like, yeah, your son has to be your caregiver because at this point, there's not anything really more that we can actually go ahead and like, they basically told me like, there's really not anything much more that we can do at this point, other than put you into pain management protocol. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's put me in the pain management protocol. But at the same time, I said, no, my son is, he just turned 18 now. I was getting ready to graduate from high school. And I'm like, no, he has his whole life planned ahead of him. He's, doing football and everything like that. I'm like, this is his life. Now I need to go ahead and figure out what I need to do, for mine. So I went ahead and got into pain management protocol, which that is a fancy way of saying, here's your additional set of pills. Because now at this point, I was on 15 medications on a daily basis that I was taking to try to manage all the different symptoms that were going on at the time. And now I'm, as I said before, I was now getting extremely angry. I was, still dealing with anxiety, depression, and now I'm starting to have suicidal thoughts because I'd lost my best friend, which was my mom. And so all these pieces were, coming into play at one time. And I'm like, you know what, something else has to give. And with the pain management protocol, one thing that was amazing from it, because it wasn't all bad. So one thing that was, amazing though, is that I did get to start speaking to a psychologist. And when I went in to see her, before I went in, at this point now, I was crying on a daily basis because I didn't know what else more to do but to cry. And so I was in the car before I went in to see her, just had another crying fit. So like, I, trying to clean my face up, put makeup on real quick and try to like go in here, so I didn't look as crazy as I, was feeling, that I went in.
I do that every day too.
Yeah.
Just,
it happened.
I look as crazy as I'm feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I'm like, all right. So, I took the breaths and everything and I go in, and I just try to put the smile on and everything.
Yeah.
And I started talking to her and she's like, well, what do you want to go through? I said, well, you know what? I said, I basically just looked at her and I said, you know what? I said, we got a whole lot of shit to get through. So if you can get through this with me, we'll be fine. And she actually just started laughing because she was like, you're funny. And I said, no, I'm dead ass serious. Like before I came in here, I was crying. I said, I really didn't know what to come in here to think or what to say. And she looked at me and she said, can I touch you? And I was like, yeah. And so, so she took my hand and she held my hand. She said, I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. She's like, you're not crazy. You can go ahead and express everything that you need to express and you can talk about it. And of course, once again, I started crying all over again because I'm like, someone understands me. It's like, to actually have someone that's, finally saying, hey, it's okay to release it and let it go. She's like, you've been strong for so long. It's okay to go ahead and to break down, because she said, when you break down, that's the part, the bottom part's that way. Now you can build back up.
Yeah. Can we pause right there?
Yeah. That's when I was like, okay.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So there's some gold inside of this, right? You still have to do the work. You still did the work, right? But to have somebody there to hold your hand, to be with you, to create space for you is powerful while you do that work. To know it's okay to not be okay around these people. Yes. It's okay to have that room to be a little messy. I mean, she could have easily said, wow, you're in the top 1% of messy people. Like,
I just keep going.
Yeah.
An exclusive
but to
club.
have somebody do that, I can imagine the relief of, well, I got somebody by my side.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's not, in my story, I didn't have the giant like stretch him into a giant. He would tear him apart, right? But he held space for him to grow. And in your story, this lady was a giant for you, giving you that room and giving you that space and teaching you and sharing with you. And you did all the growing and the work, but you had someone to come back to that you felt that comfort and that peace in that room to really be you as you were, right? You don't have to hide it anymore.
No, definitely. And that was one of the biggest pieces that I needed. But then
Yeah.
from there, I still was like, okay, well, what else more can I do? But, now I'm working on the mental aspect of it because, I had so many things that were happening to me. Because like I mentioned, divorced, the year prior, had the accident, grieving the old life from that. Then my mother, then having the surgery. And then at that point, too, the ex-boyfriend that I was dealing with at that time had became abusive. So now I'm dealing with a domestic violence situation as well, too. It's like I had all these things, piling on top of each other. And it was literally like Pandora's box was like screaming and trying to break open. And I said to her, I don't know where to, head some tails. Like, I don't know where to start. And she's like, okay, we're just going to go ahead and start where you're at right now and kind of work through all of it.
I love to interrupt people. I'm sorry, man. I just, you can interrupt me too. But why didn't you say, I can't do it? Why didn't you say, what is it inside of you? And I really want to just have you kind of share this. How come you didn't stay down? How come you didn't stay in that victim state, right? Like you could have easily held that as a story of I can't because. And why didn't you do that?
For me, I just felt that wasn't me. And I had like a voice in my head because I remember my mom saying to me, because when I was married, I wasn't myself. And when I started to get out of that and I got divorced, she was like, thank you for coming back to yourself. I know who you are as a person. I know how strong you are. I know how, yes, things could get to you, but you still have that spirit in you that you are never going to let anything, take you all the way down. And she was like, I know that that's you. And I had her voice in my head that was honestly saying to me, hey, this is not you. This is not who you are as a person. This is, you're this person that always is able to still overcome things. And then the other piece of that too was my children. I recognize I have 3 beautiful children that need their mother. Like, they just lost their grandmother. How could you, now allow for them to lose you too? It's like, yes, you've lost yourself in so many aspects, but now it's time to go ahead and come back to yourself and also be here for them and show them that they can be able to go ahead and overcome things as well, too.
Yeah, beautiful. What does your shirt say as well?
It actually says, I don't match energy, because I've seen so many memes out there that say, oh, match someone's energy. And it says on the back, it says, I remove myself. And I also say for me, it's like, sometimes I might remove myself, or my other part would be that, I maintain my own energy. Because I don't allow for other people to affect the energy that I have, that I know I have a light in me. And I refuse to let my light dim. I let my light dim for multiple decades, And now at this point, I'm like, I refuse for that. I'm always going to have my light shine. I'm going to go ahead and continue to show my strength. But at the same time, too, I know that it is okay to break down. It is okay to be vulnerable. It is okay to share what exactly is going on, because no one is okay 100% of the time. Just like you said earlier, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. And I will hold space for you. And I hold space for myself, as well, too, where I'm allowing myself the grace of, learning and growing, and I should say unlearning, and also learning things as well, too, because quite often there are some things that, come through, but, the bloodlines, or so to speak, of your family, that's like, okay, well, this is not okay. Did someone ever think about this? Like, why are we still like living in, like, why are we still going in survival mode? Why are we still in these different, things? It's like, no, this is not right. This is not how things should be. So even just interrupting those generational cycles, and just being able to say, like, hey, like, even for me, for example, going to therapy, that's a big taboo, where like I was raised in the family of what happens in this house stays in this house. And that was a very big detriment to my life, because I took that through my marriage. Like, what happens here don't stay here. And it's like, well, no, this is not okay. This is not how things are supposed to be. So I had to really, those are all those different pieces where I'm like, I'm a I like to say I'm a cycle breaker, you know, where it's like, I want to go ahead and not continue on the cycle, you know, same thing with me, even, you know, now going through everything with my chronic pain, you know, that now, you know, which we'll get into that part in a second of, you know, how I got to where I'm at, you know, at this point, as far as for like my pain levels and things like that.
Yeah.
But I was so tired of just seeing us being ignored. You know, people that are dealing with, you know, chronic pain and chronic conditions, it's like, here's your pill, now go away. And I feel like we're being treated like the bald-headed stepchild of the medical community. It's like, you know, we don't want, you know, we know that you're there, we know you exist. But if we give you something to like, you know, to have, you know, for a moment, or a toy, you know, so to speak, to like get your attention off of it, we can get you out of here. And it's like, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's us, Ryan.
I'm just the bald. I'm just the bald head.
Gosh dang it! No, it's beautiful.
I'm tired too.
You know, breaking the cycles is huge, because we do carry a lot of generational stuff. Some of it's genetic and DNA, and I don't want to get off course, because we could go down a whole new topic on that. But, you know, just coming out of this, so we got time, if you got time, but we're, you know, toward the end of the show as we wrap up your journey here, and we're not wrapping it up, because you're just barely getting started in this, in the global sense of it, right?
Absolutely.
So you meet with the psychologist, and she gives you that space, and then you start tackling the medications, and then you start tackling your body. And can you go into that, continue that journey?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So now we're on the second, because remember I said it took me 3 times to finally like for it to kind of like clink for me. Yeah. So the third time was it was a day where, as I mentioned, I'm in Wisconsin, and it was a winter day. And if anyone knows how our winters are, and if you also have affected with chronic pain, whenever there's a weather change or anything, or there's a shift, you can feel it in your body. So I used to kind of jokingly say, I know when it's going to rain. I know when like different things are going to happen. Like how they say, like sometimes the old man would say, hey, this is, you know, the older person would be like, hey, this is what, you know, when it's going to happen. Well, I was the younger person that was able to go ahead and say the same thing. And so I had a moment where I took my younger 2 kids to school. Like I mentioned, my son was already, you know, driving and stuff, so I didn't have to worry about him. I took my younger 2 to school. I came home and I just started to cry, because my body was in so much physical pain that I was like, I need to figure out something else. Like, I can't continue doing this anymore. And so I started to, as I was crying, I started to meditate, and I started to pray. And as I started doing all those things, all of a sudden my phone beeps. And I'm like, okay, it's just a message. I'm like, well, no, that's a message. And to me, it clicked in like, okay, well, why aren't you Googling any of the things or researching any of the things that these doctors and specialists are telling you? Because clearly it's not working. Why are you taking everything that they're saying for the end all be all? Because it's not. Like, you know your body, Sarita. Why are you listening to people that don't know your body? And so that was the time where I'm like, okay, I'm going to start doing research. And I went into the rabbit hole big time, to the point where I almost was late getting my kids from school because I just was like in that hole where they literally called me and they're like, you know, your kids are still here. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm coming. Like, you know, I'll be there in just, you know, like in a few minutes. And so I got there. And when I started doing that, I started to look into the things that weren't being discussed with me. Because, you know, when you go into a doctor, you're in there for maybe 10 to 15 minutes tops. No one is talking to you about your nutrition. No one is talking to you about stress management, which I thought that everyone was stressed. You know, I didn't think that there was a such thing as stress management. I had no idea. You know, no one was talking to me about my rest, which I wasn't really getting any, which in order for your body to heal, you do need to be able to go ahead and get some sleep in. So I maybe was getting, you know, an hour to 2 tops, you know, as far as for rest. And of course, I had a pill for that too, and the pill wasn't working. And so, you know, so it's like all those things. And then also reincorporating movement back into my life as well too, because as I mentioned, I went from working out 6 days a week to nothing, because my body was in so much pain and so inflamed that I really thought, you know, honestly, that I couldn't do it. And I had to really take a step back and say, hey, you know what? Let's start with small pieces, where I literally was like, okay, I'm going to take a lap around the couch. I'm going to take a lap around the house, you know, and just kind of see. And I start off with like doing that for like 5 minutes and worked my way to actually going back to the gym again and actually being in the gym. And so by doing that and really putting all those pieces together, within 4 months, I was able to go ahead and get off of all 15 medications that I was on and drop 50 pounds as well. So then I turned around and went back to the doctor the next month, and he looked at me and he's like, well, what happened? What did you do? And I said to him, I looked at him, I said, I did all the things you guys weren't talking to me about. And he goes, huh. Literally, that's all I got out of him was a, huh. I'm like, so nothing else? Like, like there's nothing, like why like I could have solved all this within 4 months instead I had to go through the whole entire year, of all this, of, trying to find out what could actually work for me. It was mind blowing. And from there, I was like, you know what? I felt like I was onto something. And part of when as we were talking about, making promises, that I had to my mom, another promise that I had to her was that I was going to finish up school, because I didn't finish up my bachelor's degree. But the caveat was I didn't tell her exactly what I was going to finish doing. So I actually ended up going back to school, and I became a transformational health and life coach. And that's where I started, get my footing, as far as for what I'm doing. And then I also became a Reiki energy healer as well, too. Also, I'm also an award-winning author now as well. I actually won an award last month for a book that I contributed to, actually sharing my comeback story from chronic pain as well, too. So it's like all those different pieces I kind of actually, started to like move forward with to be able to go ahead and kind of keep the promises that I said I was going to make to her. And actually even, fulfilled additional ones I didn't even think were in me, as far as being able to go ahead and do, and even doing the writing. So when like I said, put everything together, it showed me, that number one, there are so many people that are dealing with the same thing that I'm dealing with, if not even more. And they really don't have a space. I discovered too with the research I was doing that the majority of people that are dealing with chronic pain and chronic conditions are people of color and women. And those are the populations of the, of the world, unfortunately, that are being pushed off to the side, where they're just like, hey, we're not really concerned about you guys, let's see how it goes. And it's like, well, no, that's not how it's supposed to be going. Like, we need to have other alternatives and things, because even when it comes to like women, for example, we're the ones that are birthing the children. We're the ones that are taking care and helping out the family and everything as well, too. And it's like, well, how can you do that when you're dealing with so many things that are going on with inside your body as well, too? And even going back to some of the emotional pieces, as I mentioned, I had a lot of emotional traumas that I was holding on to that I wasn't releasing. And one thing is that, when you hold on to that, it does manifest itself in your body and comes out as physical pain. So for example, too, having like the upper neck and the back issues, from doing research and everything, it really comes from holding on to burdens that you haven't released. And like each part of your body is telling you a different emotion that you need to go ahead and actually work on. And that's actually pieces that I even do with my clients as well. So it's one of those things that it becomes so fascinating once you kind of like peel back the layers and really just look at yourself. And you have to go ahead and just kind of get raw and dirty, and it's ugly and it stinks. But it's like, it's all the things that you really honestly have to go through as far as for being able to build yourself back up. But my biggest thing is that I don't want people to do this alone. Like I did a lot of it, alone, outside of having like, a few people with me. But other than that, yes, I just said, Lori actually just said the book that I actually, that I read all the time. so yes, but that's one of those things that, I had to really do that, but I don't want anyone to not have that support. And that's the thing that my biggest piece is, that I want to be that support for people, because it's a horrible journey to go through by yourself. And if you don't have those pieces, it can get really lonely really quick, and it can turn into you not wanting to do it anymore, and then you kind of go back to, what was not working, not realizing that you already were, just at that pivotal point, that if you would have just went over that hump, you would have been able to go forward and move.
That's the beauty of having a giant in your life. The whole purpose of having a giant there to mentor you. You had people along the way that did that for you. Now you're in a position that you're doing that for others. And that's the natural progression of being a giant, is when you grow, you automatically want to go back and serve others. You don't stretch them into it. Like I said, you go back and you show them, look, you have it within you to do this. Mm-hmm. And then you put them on your shoulder and they stand up and they start seeing the world a little differently, and they start growing into it too. And then they go repeat. And so, as you say, women and women of color and people of color going through their struggles, is now we're all coming together. We have this diversity. You'll see in this group, especially, we have a lot of warriors within this group who are fighting for good. They're not even fighting for it. They're just being it. Mm-hmm. And that's creating a light for others. And it's that whole model of putting people on your shoulder and showing them their greatness. Yes. You're not putting them on your shoulder to show them how awesome you are. You're reminding them how great they are.
Yes.
And that's beautiful. And that's what I hear in your story. The whole theme is I've been there. I've been in the darkest of darkness. Mm-hmm. And I've done all the things that I was supposed to do, according to society and culture, and they weren't working. And so I found a new way. And sometimes we get to be that explorer, the person that goes out in front, right? Mm-hmm. Creates the path. Sometimes we get to follow a path, but a lot of times we're the ones out there fumbling in the darkness, trying to figure it out.
Right. And definitely creating your own path as well, too. And that's one of those big pieces as well, where it's like, I'm okay with creating my own path. And the other thing, too, is that I'm okay with people not liking me. I've had people that have said to me, oh, I don't believe that you, went through these different things. And it's, it's funny to me because it's like, well, yeah, I did, even with me going down to having to fire doctors, for example, because it's okay to fire doctors. I had to fire 3. I had one that told me that I did not look like I was in pain, and on that day, it took me about maybe 3 hours to get ready to be in a doctor's appointment for 10 to 15 minutes for him to look at me and tell me that. And so I'm like, okay, well, you're fired. And then I had another one too that said to me, as I mentioned,
punched him in the gut or drop kicked him or something, and then said, "Hey, you don't look like you're in pain either."
Exactly. Like, how's that feel? Like that. But then also too, as
don't do that. I don't condone violence.
Like really don't do that. But also to like the other doctor, because I mentioned about me having my middle child natural childbirth. That's when this other doctor's brought up to me too. He said to me, he's like, "Oh, look in your file here and saw that you had your child, natural childbirth. I don't understand how you could be in so much pain." And I looked at him and I said, okay, first of all, you're a man. You will never know what it feels like to have a menstrual cramp, let alone know what it feels like to give birth to a child.
But I've had a cold before. Isn't that the same thing?
I don't even want to. I'll just trust you. I'll trust all of you.
And that's the thing. Please trust, I went through and I said this to him and I said, you are comparing apples to oranges. I said, so we're not going to work with you. So I had to go ahead and, let go of him. And the last one said to me, it's in your head. There's no way that you can be in this much pain because there are people cannot function when they're at this level of pain. And you were able to come in here just fine. And I said, okay, you're fired as well, too. So it's one of those things where, I'm teaching.
Foul. Just fire.
Yes.
Or maybe that's Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think it was.
Either way, they're getting X'd.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm teaching people as well, how to advocate for themselves. Because the thing is that, sometimes you'll have doctors that say to you, okay, like, for example, you might say, hey, I've heard of this test, because you've been doing your own research. And you're like, hey, you know what? I want to go ahead and try this test. And if they say to you no, make sure that they document that in your chart. Because now they're denying you what you're actually asking for, regardless of if it's something, to do with your insurance or not. You can always double check with your insurance and say, hey, I'm curious, would this particular test be covered? And I actually was one of those, because I'm a smart ass. I will go and call my insurance company and say, hey, I found out about this, particular test. How much do you guys cover of it? Oh, they might say 58, whatever the case may be. Okay, cool. Thanks. Hang up. Then I go to the doctor's appointment, like, hey, I want to have this test done. If they say to you no, and they'll be like, and they might give you some excuse like, oh, well, your insurance isn't going to cover it. I'm like, no, it's covered by my insurance. You have to actually go ahead. If you put it in, they'll cover it. And that usually will throw them off because they have to document that. And that was actually a piece even that my mom had actually told me from her, from her nursing side, where she said, hey, if they ever say to you that they're not going to do this particular test, make sure they document it. As soon as they document it, because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to document it because now they're basically, like I said, denying you services. And so then they have to actually go ahead and do it. So it's one of those things that, it's a little cheat, cheat the system, so to speak, but just,
awesome.
Being able to go ahead and say that type of stuff too.
I think we need to have you on as a guest on the podcast to go over stuff like this, tools and tips for working through that, navigating that, because that would be powerful.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to.
Yeah, I want to pop this up for people too. So you're on Instagram, right?
Yes, I'm an Instagrammer. So
you're a grammer, huh?
You can go ahead and DM me, most definitely, because what I do is I do, offer one-on-one coaching. I also do workshop facilitations as well too. So if it's like, whether it's a church group, if it's your employer, if you have questions about different things, whether it's, talking about anti-inflammatory diets or talking about ways that you can prevent, pain, or, discussing how to actually release, the emotions as well too. Those are some of the things that I work on. Also, as I mentioned, award-winning author as well too, also motivational speaker, because I want to go ahead and share my story with others and kind of give some of those tips and tricks as well too, so that
What
way
is the
you
title
can.
of your book too?
Oh yes, it is called, and you know what I was going to say, did I have it next to me? I don't, but that's okay. It's called the Comeback Anthology, and it is actually myself along with 6 other authors. And so if you are interested in purchasing the book is $25, and you actually can go ahead and DM me right there on my IG, and I can go ahead and get you all the, give you my Square stuff and everything. So that way you can go ahead. And yes, Nicole, I've talked to Sway in the morning as well on Shade 45, where he is amazing. He's actually been resharing some of my stuff that I post out on my Instagram as well too, because I was talking about everything that I've been doing, and he's kind of been following my story, along with me, as well. And he's like, whatever I can do as far as for trying to assist you, definitely let me know. So that's also been, something. So my biggest thing is just, getting the word out, letting people know that I'm here and that I'm available to help them, because I don't really see anyone that looks like me doing what I'm doing. And so that's the part that, to share that, hey, I look like a lot of people that are out there actually dealing, with this. And also too, I've recognized that I've actually worked with more men than women as well, because they actually finally feel comfortable being able to discuss the physical pain and the emotional pain that they've been going through as well. And that, it's okay to express it, because they're so often in society, saying that men have to be all, the macho strong and everything. You can't break down, you can't do these things. And it's like, no, like this is, this is creating additional generations of, people not being able to go ahead and release and share their emotions. And it's like, no, your emotion is just as valid as anyone else. And if you feel like crap, then you need to go ahead and let someone else know that, and also be able to create that space in your relationships as well too, to be able to go ahead and have that safety, have that belonging, have that love, and have that understanding, all those things that, it's our birthright. We should be able to go ahead and have all those things. And so why not be able to go ahead and create those and create the life that you deserve?
Have them. Yeah, we're going to have them anyway. Mm-hmm. Why not just bring it out in the open, right?
Yes.
That's beautiful. If you were to share, a final piece of wisdom before we wrap up the show here, just if you were to go back in time to yourself before all of this, going into it, that you could share one thing with yourself at that point, what would you have shared?
Trust your intuition and believe that your body can heal. Those will be my 2 pieces, my 2 biggest pieces. Trust your intuition. It never lets you down. And also still continue. I'm sorry, Maddie. Also too, and then also too, that, it's okay to heal yourself, not only just on the physical, but also on the mental side as well too. Because part of that trusting your intuition, sometimes you might be concerned as if you're trusting your intuition based off of trauma or based off of healing. And so you want to be able to go ahead and trust your intuition based off the healing aspect of it, not because of the trauma that's occurred to you.
That's beautiful. Ryan, I got to say thank you to Ryan, because if you could see all these comments coming through, there's hundreds of comments coming through. And he manages to get them through. And so sometimes he doesn't get a chance to speak because he's so enthralled in that. So I try to help him out a little bit. But I want to hear from Ryan.
I still have thoughts on things. It's just sometimes, managing it all. Yeah, you're right. But,
it's a lot.
What I heard, and what spoke to me was your intuition. And I started thinking about the book, The Giants and the Smalls, that Nick wrote. And in there, Rid is going, to and from the same path every day. He's listening to all the people that are around him, right? The doctors and the people that are saying, to be successful, you need to do this, you need to do this, and this is how you need to be, and blah blah blah, blah. All these voices in his head, right?
Even his own, right? His own,
even his own, right? Yeah. And at one point, he hears something different. He hears a distant laughter, and he looks up. But for me, I was thinking about hearing yourself, and you finally heard yourself, and the giant that was speaking in the distance was something familiar.
Mm-hmm.
That was your intuition. That was
Yeah.
something that said, "Hey, wake up."
Mm-hmm.
And you looked up and you started down a different path.
Yes.
And that path could be very scary because all these times you've been having all of these different doctors and you're going through so much pain and maybe a lot of darkness, doubt, worry,
Mm-hmm.
fear. But through that, you started on a new journey and you got to start trusting yourself and
Yes.
building yourself up and growing and stretching into that giant that you needed to be. And I want to just give you a giant hug and a pat on the back and tell you how proud I
Thank
am of you for, yeah, I know it's a virtual hug because we, like it's crazy these times we're living in,
you.
but to be able to just give you that recognition and those kudos of great job. That's amazing. That's a giant thing. And so much pain and so much heartache. And but I sit here right now in gratitude for all of those things that you experienced. And I'm sorry that you had to deal with them and you had to go through them, but I'm so grateful that you did because the lives impacted from you and your story and sharing it, being authentic and real with us here today is going to continue in that ripple effect. And we'll continue to support and encourage. And now we've formed a new friendship and a bond here
Yeah.
that's going to continue to ripple out and impact more and more giants. So thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
story.
No, thank you as well too. And I know you said that we're, meeting virtually. I've got to a point now where whatever, and it might sound, I don't care what it sounds. I'm not even going to preface it. I'm just going to say this, that whatever I say happens will happen. So we are all definitely going to meet in person. We are definitely going to have the actual, I'm a hugger. So I'm going to tell you right now, we are.
I have shirts that say I'm a giant hugger, right?
So
That's
it
me.
is definitely, it's definitely it's going to happen, most definitely. But no, thank you, for all of your beautiful words and everything as well too. Because I mean, it touches me. And the thing is that, I don't do this for the recognition or anything like that. I really do it truly from the heart. And the thing is that, going through all of this, it really ended up taking me back to myself. And I really got to learn who I was as a person, because through a lot of this, I lost myself. Through many decades of different things that are going on, I didn't really know who I was as a person. And so now I'm basically creating the life that I want and the life that I deserve. And that, I'm going to have everything that I want to have, if not, and then some. And I want to definitely bring others with me. I want them to be able to go ahead and see that they can have the life that they create. They don't have to stay on the hamster wheel of, okay, I have this crappy job, or I have to do this, I have to do that. Well, it's like, well, no, like, you have control of this. You can go ahead and make, what you want to have happen. And yes, I understand that there's going to be things that are going to happen. Hell, I just shared over an hour, just like a chunk of my life. I've had way more shit than that happened to me, but this is like, this
way
is
more
like
shit.
that, way more that, that this is just one, this is just one, piece. This is just like the last, like, honestly, like 7 years of my life that I really just been, sharing part of it. And then like this last 5 has been close to 5 now, as far as from my accent and stuff. And just being able to go ahead and share that and say, look at everything that's happened just within this time frame, that, I've been able to do such a great, such a grand pivot, from all of this. And now, having a platform, being able to go ahead and share and show and let people know that, yes, I'm here for you. I want to be here for you. Let's go ahead and let's walk this journey together. You're no longer alone. You have someone here that wants to be here with you.
That's beautiful. Well, guys, if you can hang on after, let's do a little after show if you got time.
Of course.
If not, you're good. But we're going to wrap up the episode for those that are listening. And just know that we always say this. So we have the X Stone. We're creating more of these for you guys as well. They're on Black Diamond, which is a really cool stone. So we'll get those prepared and created. But just a reminder in that is you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're right on time. You're doing exactly what you should be doing in the thing that you've chosen to do. It's perfect. So trust that. Thanks for watching. Share this video with your friends, family members, anybody that you feel could be served by this video. and put them in touch with Sarita. And we will see you in the next episode.
Love you too.
I love the request for the after show. So yeah, this is where it's all relaxed. But thank you.
And I got my drink, so
yeah,
we're
now
ready.
you can take a drink. I can finish my breakfast in a bottle.
It's amazing. Every journey is so different. We didn't even get all of your story. I mean, in an hour, everything that's gone on in your life, there's no way. There's no way. It's just a drop, It's beautiful. Thank you.
Let's talk just more relaxed. What does Sarita like to do? What kind of gets you going? What relaxes you? What do you do for recreation, for fun?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm actually diving more into like different spiritual practices and things and kind of continuing my journey. So I often have to start my day with just like my own spiritual hygiene, what I call it, where I have to go ahead and like, I got to get my meditation in. I got to get my prayers in, got to get my journaling in. And sometimes I can't get every single piece in, but it's like, I have like my top 5, you always got to have your top 5 things that you go back to, as far as for that part. I'm a big crystal person, as well as I'm sitting here with you guys. So I got my crystals in my hands and everything as well.
Right back. I got to show you some stuff. Nick's got a whole collection sitting right there.
I got like stones everywhere. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not into angels or magic or any of that stuff. That stuff's ridiculous. And then I got all this all over me.
Exactly. Right? Or you have like the SpongeBob moment where you're like 5 years later, like you're sitting in a room of crystal, like, I'm like, how did this happen? Like, I don't know. But then also too, I'm an avid reader, as well. I love being able to go ahead and just like dive into different things and learn more. I love music. I like have to have my music with me. I got to have my candles, as well too, which actually I'm going to be starting up a candle line, actually, believe it or not. So I'll go ahead and just start mentioning that as I'm talking about it, with the candles, because I'm a Reiki energy healer. I'm actually going to be doing, the first one I'm going to be releasing is actually going to be called Release Your Burdens, where it's going to actually have different essential oils in it. It's also going to have crystals in it as well too, and Reiki energy. And so that's like the first one I'm going to do. The next one after that is going to be called Unconditional Love, because those are the 2 things that I actually, during my journey, I had to really work on, because I had a lot of, I had low self-esteem for quite some time, just from different things that happened to me, while I was growing up, where I had to really work on that and actually bring that back up, where now it's like, I live off of unconditional love. I don't expect for someone to like do these things, for me, or, I do things out of the kindness of my heart. Anything that I do and say, I'm not expecting for anything to come back to me. If it does, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, I'm good, because I have enough love inside of me that I don't have to be, concerned about that. Wow. So those are, those different things that I, had to recognize. And also too, because of me being like a first generation American and everything, I had a lot that I was holding on to. And like, even with me, making the promises to my mom, taking care of my dad, all these different things, taking care of my kids, all the different things that I've really been kind of like having on my back. I had to be like, what, Sarita, it's okay to take this, put it down over here. It's all right for it to sit there. You don't have to always be the, the strong, the resilient, all those different things like that. It's okay to just release all of that and be able to move forward. And it's an amazing scent. I mean, I can't just as far as going back to candles.
And it smells good.
It smells good. I'm a smell person. If it's, and it's all organic, ingredients and things like that too. So it's like, why not?
Yeah.
Seems like we've got a lot of candle fiends on here. All of a sudden they come out of the woodwork.
Oh yeah, hit the DM. You guys will be first ones up on the ordering block. Most definitely. I'm working on
sold out in a week. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's goals, man.
Yeah. we ought to get some of these black diamonds in there. So this is one we're putting an X into now, but
that is beautiful.
But the X stone, that idea there too ties into it. If just wherever you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. But these candles too are just a way to get present, like, because the smells and the visual of it, I can see that being pretty healing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the focus, just being able to go ahead and give people different tools for their toolbox, Because at the end of the day, it's like, you got to really find out what works for you. Because I even have like me, I love journaling. I have some of my male clients that are like, I am not journaling for you, Sarita. I love you, but I am not writing anything. And so I say, okay, that's fine. I said, well, you got this. Go ahead and do voice notes, you know,
Just
and then 9 times out of 10, they turn into journaling. And they're like, I can't believe I'm sitting here writing in this damn book for you, but here you go. And I'm just like, you're not doing it for me. You're doing it for yourself, you know, but it's still kind of funny how, you know, they go through that metamorphosis of being able to be like, okay, I'm going to do this now. You know, I see that there's some benefit, you know, to it. It's not just some mumbo jumbo that you're, you know, telling me about, that I actually can see, you know, what's happening. And that's the piece. And it's really just like, you know, as Martin Luther King said, you know, being able to go ahead and take that step, you know, because you can't see the whole staircase, but you got to go ahead and walk out on faith. And once you're able to go ahead and do that, that's when everything starts to come together. And it's even going back to like the universal parts, you know, like I said before, you know, once I made the decision that I'm going to heal, everything started to come, you know, out of the woodworks, out of anywhere. Like I was started to put in line with people that, you know,
isn't that amazing?
That I see. And be able to go ahead and move forward. And it's like, I have so many things that I want to do. And like you said, you know, it's like, I'm just getting started. Like I'm just getting my feet wet. You know, I'm here.
I'm looking at all the places where I can find my small parts. That might sound wrong, actually. Now that I say that, you grow them into giant parts, right? But it's true. Like you have an area where at one point maybe you're strong, you're feeling giant, and then you feel small, and then you grow, and then you find another area where you feel small and you grow, and it's never ending. It's beautiful. Do you have I was going to ask you if you have a favorite book, like or a most recent book that you just absolutely loved?
One of my favorite books actually is The Alchemist. And but yes, the Alchemist, I would say, is like one of my top books that I have read. And it was interesting because it took me a long time to read it, not gonna lie, but once I actually got into it, I was stuck, because it starts off, you know, kind of on the slow side, but then once it starts to pick up, and really I started reading it more as a focus for when I was going back and forth on the airplane to go see my mom and visiting her. And the wild part about it is that I actually finished the book at that same time was the last flight that I took to actually see her and was with her. And so that was really one of those things where, you know, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the book at all, as far as like the journey and everything that you're going on, because I didn't realize that the different things that were happening were putting me onto my journey. Like even with the things that were going on with my mom, because part of what's happening with her getting sicker is that she had already had type 2 diabetes. Well, now it turned into type 1 and 2. And so she had to go through and kind of like start changing like her nutrition and things like that.
Yeah.
I started walking her through all that, not having any experience doing any of it, but I just like started like educating myself. And so I started like teaching her different things. And it was so funny because she said to me, she's like, you know, you'd be really good at this. If you could find a job doing something like this, that would be really awesome for you. And I just was like, okay, like I'm just only doing this, you know, for you.
Yeah.
But I said, you know, because she was like, you're so passionate about this. She's like, I can't believe that, you know, you really are diving into this. And so I said, I'm like, well, if I do, fine. And it's like, you know, fast forward, that's part of what I do is, you know, I go through and I look through a person's nutrition, and we go through and we kind of, you know, make those adjustments for them. So that way they can feel the best, you know, that feel better, you know, when it comes to their health. So it's amazing that, you know, just those little pieces, that everything just goes ahead and puts itself together. And she's, like I said before, she's always with me. You know, she's always like, you guys
I thought you said tattoo diabetes. And I'm like, shit, that's a thing.
Tattoo diabetes.
I'm like, I got tattoo diabetes. I'm like,
so,
damn
yeah,
it.
so, and I'm actually talking of tattoos. I got like 6 or 7 of them.
All right, we're in the same boat then.
Yeah,
mine are all clear.
Mine are all clear. Invisible.
It's never too late.
Yeah. We'll
bring you in. It's an initiation. You got to get one if you want to be part of the cool kids.
Oh, that club? Dang it. Yeah, I'm part of other clubs though, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sarita, yeah, try not to say too much around Ryan. He's not one of those cool kids. Yeah.
Hey, we can even get you a fake one too. It's okay.
Yeah, right.
We'll bring in that one.
A lick and stick.
Yes.
Didn't like bazooka gum back in the day
Yeah.
have those that like were inside? Yeah.
Yeah.
They were
Now
all
we're
over.
sharing our ages, which I know I didn't even
Right.
say how old I am as well, too, which is the other thing. I recognize that I'm also aging in reverse, and that's okay. You know, I'm enjoying that, you know, as well, because a lot of times,
Benjamin Button style. Yeah.
pretty much, you know, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, my son is 22 now, and it's so funny because, like, a lot of times, like, I'll be out with him, and people think that he's either my boyfriend or my brother, and I'm like, well, no and no. I'm like, I'm actually his mom. And they're like, that's your mom? Like, your mom is hot. And I'm like, ew. He'll be like, yeah, don't say that about
Please
my mom.
don't. Yeah. Every
That's
teenage
hilarious.
boy ever.
Oh yeah, when he was in football, it was awful. Like he
Yeah.
just was like, Mom, do you have to come to the games? I'm like, yeah, like you've been playing football since you were 7. I'm gonna come to every single game. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm gonna wear your jersey and I'm a football mom. Like, what do you mean? Like,
That's funny.
So awesome.
Moms are the best.
Yeah. Love moms.
Love moms. Well, sweet.
Well, and what's your goals for what do you have like for 2022? What's coming down the pipeline? What do you see coming in your life?
well, good question. So I'll say like, because I know a lot of us have been doing like, hey, honey. See, can you tell my mom right away? I'm like, screw you guys. Hey.
That's
But
Sarita. Can you say hi?
Hi, Capri.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Capri's amazing.
I see.
It's a giant, huh? Are you a giant? Heck yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
as far as for like looking at 2022, I know a lot of people have been going like, well, what's your word, you know, for the year and stuff like that. And I don't actually have a word. I have words because as you can tell, I don't just, you know, have one thing to say. I got plenty. So, so mine are actually I have 2 of them. Mine is healing and visibility. I was recognizing that, you know, I share my story, but I've been selective on how I've been sharing it. And now I'm like, no, you don't. Why are you, you know, putting a box on yourself? Like I'm the person that always says, don't put baby in a corner. Like that's me. Like don't put me in a box and try to like, you know, why are you doing that to yourself? Because the only person that's stopping you is you. So it's like, you know, whatever opportunities you have as far as for being able to share your story, share it. And if there's not an opportunity, create it. You know, that's the reason why, you know, you're here. You're a creative person. Go ahead and make those areas, you know, for yourself that you can go ahead and share. So those would be like, you know, as far as for what I'm looking at. But then also too, some of like my big goals is that I do want to also get a chronic pain self-care subscription box. So I want to actually have items in there where you know, people can go ahead and have that information at their homes, because the thing is that, you know, when you're at home and you feel like crap, you don't want to go out anywhere to try to get anything and feel better. So it's like, why not have something shipped to your house that can make you feel better? And I'm actually looking for vendors that are either women or people of color, you know, to be able to go ahead and put their, you know, their items in the box. So if there's anyone that you guys know of,
that's cool.
Go ahead and forward them, you know, my way, you know, so that way I can go ahead and work with them and see about creating it. I'm also looking at the possibility of a loungewear line as well too, because the thing is, when you're at home and you feel like crap, you want to wear something that's comfy.
Love lounge. I'm in an Adidas tracksuit pants and a hood. You know, we got my Sunday comfies on.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, you want to be comfortable. And I remember there were times too where, you know, when I was going through my journey, that even certain clothes would touch me and it would feel like, you know, pins and needles, or like I was being cut, you know, even though it really wasn't happening, but it's just the feeling of it from different materials. And it's like, you know, having something that makes you feel comfortable is amazing. But then my biggest goal and dream, and I'm going to remove the word dream because I know it's going to happen, because I know dream is like, but no, it's actually a goal. And so my big goal would actually have a wellness center that actually is for people of color and women, where they actually have people that can help them that actually look like them, so they actually can feel seen and heard. And whether it be, you know, going down from yoga, doctors, chiropractic, you know, you name it, I want to be like a one-stop shop. because I feel like, this is something that I've never seen. And it's like, why not, create the things that you haven't seen? And so that's what I'm, looking at as being the biggest goal.
Well, you're already getting next shows scheduled right here. So we have our
We got
network that
2
we just
invites
launched.
already.
Yeah, already. So yeah, you'll be well known among our network, and our network continues to grow, which is beautiful. So yeah, keep sharing. We'll probably have you on the podcast too, and dive into what you know, like all your knowledge, like really dive into that world. That would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I'm already down for it. You don't have to say we possibly, it's going to happen. So, like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I like how you speak it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
is a
down
declaration.
for it, because it's one of those things that, people need to know and, to be able to go ahead and share that information. And it's interesting.
There's 3 invites now.
Okay.
3 different shows.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm down. Let's sync calendars and make it happen. That's my
It
thing.
already is. Yeah.
I want to be out here. I want to go ahead and share and just let people know. And the thing is, like, I had moments too where, you get that imposter syndrome, where, you start to be like, well, I've had those times where sometimes you have like those weird, the little voices in your head that you recognize that aren't you. Uh-oh. But, the ones that say to you like, hey,
4 invites.
There you go.
Shows.
Damn, can I get a 5?
Right, I do Clubhouse too. So if you guys got Clubhouse rooms, I'll do a Clubhouse room with you as well. So that might open another floodgate. Who knows? But I mean, like, looking at those, those pieces and everything and saying, hey, you know what? Having those voices that say, well, did you really heal yourself? And it's like, dude, you walk around every single day. What do you mean, did you heal yourself? Like those little like crazy things that pop up sometimes that just make you question yourself. But then you're like, okay, that's just something else, just kind of, one of those old school doubts that you got to just kind of limited belief that you got to kind of push off to the side and recognize that that's not it, that, you are here, for a reason. And yes, you were able to do it in, the quote unquote record time, so to speak, but time is so, what is time? And that's a whole nother rabbit hole you can go through, but, just kind of like looking at
like, dive down that one too. Yeah.
Right. It's like, it's based off where your journey is, you, like we were saying before, you are right where you need to be. As far as for anything that's going on. And I always am a firm believer that, and also moving at your own pace. Like I actually, like one of my last things that I just did was like a reel on my Instagram, just saying that it's okay to move at your own pace. Because right now, especially with it being the beginning of the calendar new year, so many people are like, oh, I got to have this resolution. I got to do this. I got to create these goals and all these things. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, who said that you have to do that? Like, go ahead and move with your own, your own compass, use your own intuition and recognize. Because like for me, I believe that the new year actually is the vernal equinox in March. That's the time frame that I believe, because you're now seeing all the things are starting to grow and everything, the springtime and things are starting to flourish. Like right now, it's still winter where I'm at. So it's like, I'm in the frozen tundra right now. So it's like, who wants to be out here trying to like create different things and doing all these like grandiose plans when it's like, I just want to stay warm. Like I just want a cup of like nice tea or like some nice cocoa or something, and just like kind of, but it's that opportunity to dive back into yourself, have that time, with self, and just kind of say, hey, what is it that I want? What do I want to create, and be able to go ahead and move.
I want to speak. I love it. I could go off on a tangent here a little bit, but I was having a conversation the other day about trees, the trees and moving into the spring, and then to summer, then to fall. Right.
Yes.
But everybody wants to go from winter to summer. They want to go to a full blown tree with fruit on it from winter. And nature always teaches us that you start with a sprout. You start with one little leaf, right? One little thing at a time. You reintroduce it that way, and then it expands out. But give yourself a winter.
Yes,
it's needed.
Absolutely. You do, and that's it. And it's the planting season. You gotta let it grow. See, you know what? I don't want to hear about it being 70.
Yeah, I know.
Like it's like set. No, actually, like I can actually tell you guys.
Probably pretty nice
what the weather is, because I know it's just awful. But it's 18, so it's 18 degrees right now. Is what I'm working with.
That's balmy.
In Canada, it's -6.
Sheesh.
Hey, they can keep.
We're
that.
just
I have
above
family
freezing currently.
Oh, sorry, I lied. It's 14. Temperature actually went down. So yeah.
Hashtag so nope.
Yeah, no, and that's actually another goal too. Is I want to actually move somewhere warmer, because I've got to that point. Because like I mentioned, my parents are actually from the West Indies. So my mom was from Barbados and my dad's from Dominica. And so when they retired from here, they moved down to Florida. And I'm like, really? Like, you just leaving me up here. They're like, well, you're married with kids, Sarita. You can't really like come down here. I'm like, yeah, no. So like now I'm definitely looking at, going somewhere warmer, at this point, and just
I need a beach. Lots of beaches.
Well, I'm a water sign
Yeah.
too. So I need my water. Like, that's how I'm able to transmute energies and things like that too. Or like, if I'm feeling away, I go hop in the shower because I'm like, okay, at least I can go ahead and just, get it out. But if I can actually like wake up to a sunrise and look at a sunset by some water, that's goals. Like, I don't even have to be on a vacation. Like, if I can just see that and that's there, I'm golden. So that's definitely another goal too that I want to go ahead and
That's me. If my life goes south, just make sure it's Mexico.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, there you go. And I haven't been to Mexico yet, so that's a place I definitely want to go visit.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. Well, should we go about our day?
It's worked perfect. This is amazing. Thank you, Sarita. We appreciate it.
Sarita, you've been awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. You guys are awesome as well. Like I said before, thank you for creating a space for us. Because I know that we are all unique beings. And when you're able to go ahead and truly find, your place, that's where you need to be at. And like I said before, the universe does it. As soon as you move out the way, everything comes together for you. And we're all able to, make things happen.
Right. So we got to get out of our own way, right?
I
love it.
Here come the Giants. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you. We will see everybody on the next show. So we'll do this again. We'll be reaching out.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. We're syncing calendars. Let's sync watches, and get together. Clink.
Awesome.
Hey, it is done. Yep.
It is done. Thanks for being on. Everybody that's watching, thank you as well. We'll do this again and again and again and again. It's never going away. It's just getting better. There goes my green screen. So it's time. There it is. Well, there's the fan. There's the rest of the house. That's awesome. Okay, guys, take care. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.